Hey everybody, welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Adam Adams, and you're going to want to subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep bringing you the value. If you're a real estate professional and you want to be able to be a better investor, a better realtor, this is the channel for you. So make sure you go down here and subscribe. Today, DJ Scruggs, he's the CEO of Blue Spruce, is going to be giving us some technology advice, how we can actually beat the competition with technology by utilizing tips, tricks, and tools and other strategies to be able to improve our real estate business. So without further ado, here is DJ Scruggs.
Corporate communities, we like to call them. And I've been doing, well, let's just start with this quote first. Has anyone here ever heard of William Gibson? Does that name ring a bell? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've heard it? So he wrote a book, wrote a bunch of books, but one of them is, he wrote it back in 1984, I want to say it was released, called Neuromancer. Mm-hmm. And Neuromancer basically predicted the modern internet. At that time, the internet existed. It's been around since 1972, but it didn't really take off until the mid-90s. And he had played around with this technology like a lot of other researchers, and he's one of those people that can see the future, you know, not just a couple years in advance, but 10, 20 years in advance. And so a lot of the concepts, for example, the idea of cyberspace, comes from that book, Neuromancer. So there's a few people out there who can really see the future. I'm hoping my presentation today will give you a sense of what you could be using now and also to think a little bit about what's coming down the road. I love this quote too because it's true. The future is not evenly distributed. Some of us are using old technologies because that's the way they've always been done. And keeping up with the future is a hassle. I mean, right up to the moment I put this slide up, I was still fiddling with my phone, trying to get an app that used to work that suddenly stopped working. So if you feel like, oh man, I don't understand all this stuff, that's okay. I mean, even those of us on the cutting edge find ourselves bewildered at times. So let's jump right into it. So what I want to add is that the future of real estate investing is already here. It's not evenly distributed. So there's a lot of technologies that, as I mentioned, are available today that you may not even be aware of that can turbocharge your results when it comes to finding properties, closing on properties, raising money, all kinds of things that are available. At this point, you're wondering, who is this guy again? So my background, I've been doing real estate for about 3 years now. Before that, I spent about 20 years doing various startups, mostly web infrastructure related. So my very first company made a product for managing inbound email. This is back in 1996 that we started. And I would go speak at events like this to investors, and most of them thought email was a joke. Like, it's just a toy, you know, in their mind it was all just AOL. You got mail. They never thought it would be a serious business tool. So I just spent a lot of time convincing people this is a serious technology that's going to be used for a lot of modern commerce. And then fast forward a few years and it was like, oh, email's, it's over. There's already too much of it, you know. And there are still companies coming out today that do essentially what my product made, which was tools to manage customer communications. If you ever see those little web chat pop-ups on a website. So my company made the first one of those in 1997. We had that. But it didn't really catch on until about 2007. So sometimes you think you have a solution, but the market isn't ready for it yet. So it's been fascinating to watch it grow. But along the ways, I've done about a dozen, well, let's say a half dozen that either I've started the company, and then another 4 or 5 where I've been an early investor or an employee or an early partner. The most well-known one that you all may have heard of is based up in Boulder, and they're called Survey Gizmo. Everyone always thinks Survey Monkey when they hear that. And it's like Survey Monkey, but it's geared more toward industrial applications, you know, research projects where you have to do a lot of double-blind tests and things, you know, split tests and things like that to make sure that you're getting available data, and they're still going strong today. So one of the things I've learned, this is, I think, kind of captures what a lot of these events can be like. I don't know if everyone can read this, but it says, it's the devil, and he's interviewing a potential demon. I need someone well-versed in the art of torture. Do you know PowerPoint? So I'm going to try not to torture you too much today, but I know what it can be like sitting on the other end. I tried to use visuals as much as possible so that you can really get a sense of exactly how these tools work. So there's a couple things I'm not going to cover, more than a couple, because I feel like these are all separate topics on their own. So one of them is crowdfunding, online education, virtual reality, which is a really interesting technology, but it never quite seems to get to where they say it's going to be. They've been predicting for years that virtual reality is going to catch on. It still hasn't really caught on. Social media, SEO, which means search engine optimization, if you don't know that term. And then podcasts, except for, of course, our podcast, the Creative Real Estate Podcast, which is hosted by Adam and sometimes myself. Please check that out on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. But I'm going to cover some different areas where I find technology most useful in my day-to-day work, right? So we're talking about marketing, process management, how do you deal with so many leads that you're trying to track down? Mobile technology, because for many of these, they're now mobile first. It's like the computer is the secondary choice in a lot of cases. Security, a very important topic that is not going to get less important. That's the one industry you can invest in today, and 20 years from now, people will still be saying, but security, it's not there yet. I mean, it's a never-ending, it's an infinite pile of money, basically, that's getting poured into security and to subvert security. Personal productivity, and then just a little bit about the future, specifically blockchain and Bitcoin. Where do I think that is going to play a role? So let's talk. First of all, do you have a website for your business? Raise your hand if you do. Okay. So it's come, in my own work, whether it's in real estate or in other works, it's a basic. You've got to have some kind of a presence so that when someone Googles you, they find that first instead of your Facebook or your Instagram or whatever is the popular tool today. So a lot of people that look at it go, oh God, I got to create a website. Well, there's tools out there that make it really, really, really easy. And moreover, there are tools specifically for real estate. So it's not just going to Squarespace and choosing theirs. It's tools that are geared specifically toward fix and flip type websites. So the one I'm featuring here is called Lead Propeller. It was one that I used for a while at DJ Pays Cash. It's just upload a couple photos and bang, you have a website. It's a very fast process. It's got the form, asking people to call you or to click here to submit your information. And at the very least, you can point someone to say, this is my website and here's how you can contact me. And it literally is just 5 minutes. Another one that's really popular is called Investor Carrot. That one's probably even more popular than Lead Propeller. I came across Lead Propeller from the podcast Flipping Junkie, which is a terrific podcast. He really understands content marketing. His name's Danny Johnson. And what he did was he basically teaches you everything you need to know about fix and flip. And he has a whole course, online course that's free. And if you just listen to his podcast once a day or once a week, however much time you have, you'll learn everything you need to know. And of course, all he wants is to get you to sign up for his website tool. But you don't have to sign up for his. You can sign up for Investor Carrot or others. But if you're not doing this and you're trying to kind of do it on your own, you're wasting time. It's just way faster. It's already been optimized for your location. You just type in what city, and it fills in the words for you. So this is an example of what I had a video made. This is the kind of thing that you can find someone on Fiverr, or I'll talk about Fiverr in a second. But I went out, we shot the video, took place over one morning. I think we spent 2 hours there. It cost me, I think, $400 to get the video. And it's me talking. But that's optional. You don't need that, but it's easy to include it in your website so that if you want to do a little commercial there. So this is Fiverr. Has anyone here heard of Fiverr before? So that's spelled Fiverr, Fiverr. And that is great for all kinds of digital tasks. So digital tasks might be designing a logo for you. It might be we use them for a lot of our events. We need a nice little flyer that has a nice banner and pictures of the guests or the speakers and the details. You can outsource that to Fiverr, and for as little as $50, you can have someone do the design for you. They're fast. They all have reviews. This is the one I did for an infographic. We haven't actually done the infographic. We're still noodling on it, but they'll build you some really beautiful infographics for less than $100. It's incredible. But you can find people to do video for you. You can find people to do full websites for you, to help manage your website. It's a great resource for finding small tasks that can easily outsource, so that you're not tearing your hair out with all the details that go into helping with your website or event you're promoting. So this one I don't see as often. That I think is terrific, but it's a little pricier, called FlipCall. Does anyone here ever use FlipCall? So FlipCall is, it's actually, they don't really advertise it, but it's run by the National Realtor Association. Is that what it's called? That's like NRA. What is it? Realtors? National Association of Realtors. No, not the NRA. They are.
Sometimes they're
And this gives you access to the MLS. Like a lot of people who come into this business, they're not sure. Maybe they become an agent, which is great, but maybe they don't want to become an agent. This will essentially give you access to the MLS. You'll pay roughly $250 a month, and it will give you, all the types of information you can see on the MLS, and they'll even try to make an estimate for you based on previous sales. It's better than Zillow, but it's still pretty basic what they can do. But as someone like myself, when I first got into fix and flip, I didn't have a license. I didn't really want to do that, so this was a great service. They, unfortunately, I think because they're part of the National Association of Realtors, they have a kind of a scarcity mentality. Like I wanted to, as a tech guy, and I've written a lot of code. So what I wanted to do is to get what's called an API access. So I could just, crawl through the data and build my own models. And there's a lot of services that do that. Zillow offers that for free. You can just become a developer and start pulling their data and use it. Well, these guys charge $5,000 a month for API access. There's no way I was going to do that. And I think that's one of those things that's penny wise and pound foolish. Like, yeah, maybe they'll get the big brokerage firms to spend that $5,000 a month, but there's literally hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands of people like me who would gladly pay $150 a month for that. And they would grow their ecosystem exponentially if they did that. It's just very short-sighted thinking from my perspective. And this is, by the way, and we know this not, I know this not because it's just, I'm disgruntled that I have to pay $5,000 a month. I've seen it happen. I mean, that's part of how Zillow grew so quickly, is because they have a free API. Twitter grew so quickly because they have a free API. Facebook has a free API, and maybe it shouldn't have been so free. Free APIs can change the game in terms of innovation within a space, and these guys are purposefully lowering the amount of innovation that can happen on their platform. And I think it's a big mistake, and it's not surprising. They're the National Association of Realtors. They want to keep things exactly like they are. They don't want to see any changes. So another thing you can do is to create, using Google Sites. So a lot of times you have your website, and it's kind of generic. It's like who we are, how we got started, maybe some pictures of houses you flipped. But what if you need to blast out an email to let's say you're a wholesaler, you want to blast out an email to people with more specific information about a specific deal. Most sites are not very good at making it easy for you to build a nice looking page like that with just on the site. So what you can do instead is use Google Sites. Google Sites, I'm surprised it's not more well known. If you go into Google search, just search for Google Sites, and it'll come up number one. And you can just create a website, and what you can do is over here is you can drag and drop stuff in it. So this is, I just took an email that someone sent me that was poorly formatted with these ugly kind of pictures were sort of jammed in and just didn't look very professional. What they could have done is said, click here for details and take them to a page that's much better formatted. There's a nice title. I just copied and pasted the email I got from this person. I didn't make any changes to it. And I dragged in a Google map so that people can zoom in themselves to see it. If you have a video, you can drag that in. Maybe you have a small slideshow you can create with Google Slides. You can drag that in as well. It's just so much more professional looking. And they give you a bunch of different themes. It's just a better presentation of your product. And presentation can make all the difference.
Is it free? Google Sites?
Yes, it is free. Google Sites.
And DJ, this is for building like a specific landing page for a property?
Yeah, that's what I would use it for. Is things like that. Just I think you can even, you can embed a form in it as well. So if you want to say contact me, fill out this form. It's a great tool, and it really is really fast and really simple. It's limited, but for most of what we do, I think it's great. It certainly beats, a lot of times I'll get an email that's a link to a Dropbox, and it's like image_4, image_5, image_6. It's just a terrible presentation. It makes me wonder if you're serious about the business when I see that. So these things can make a big difference in upping your professionalism. So this is one that we use a lot at Blue Spruce for process flow. It's called Trello. Let me look at what I've got up next just to make sure it's the right screen. So Trello is an online version of, if you've ever worked with a company that has a whiteboard and maybe you put sticky notes up on the whiteboard, it's good for managing processes, right? Sort of in an ad hoc way. So each one of these columns is, so like here's a to-do item. Here's something I'm working on. So let's say it's time to send gifts. Let's say I have to close send gifts. I can drag that over to here, and now I know what I'm currently working on this. And then things that are waiting. This is very common. You know, you're trying to get a property inspection done, but the guy hasn't called you back, but you don't want to lose that task, so you put it in the waiting column. That way you know stuff that you're waiting for. And then things that are done. And you can set these up however you want. We have a backlog to do, doing, waiting, done. But you can have, follow-up call number 1 with a potential investor. And then once that call's done, you drag it into follow-up call number 2. And that way you know sort of where you are in the process. But what's cool about it is when you click on one of those cards, it opens up and there's a whole bunch of other things you can do. So we have a template here for our podcast. This has all the to-dos for every time a podcast episode goes live. So we don't have to write them down every single time. We just copy this card and then we use that. And so you can have a to-do list. These are all items you can check off. You can link to it. So if you want to send someone a link to the card within your team who needs to be able to work on it, you can do that. You can add a due date. You can attach files to it. Everything that's relevant to this podcast. Like, for example, we might want a headshot of the person who's on the show with us. You can all put that in this card metaphor. And it's really terrific because it gets you out of email, just emailing each other back and forth all the time. It gives it to an external system so that anyone in your team can come in and work on it. It's a really powerful tool, and it's free. It's free up to, I think, 10 boards you can have, or maybe it's 10 users or something like that. It's free. And it's been around forever, but it came from the software development world. There's a methodology they call Agile, which basically means build software faster. It used to be they would do a formal spec that would be a document this thick, that you would write out the entire functional spec before you write even a single line of code. The web changed all that because you can iterate and prototype faster. And so this idea of saying, let's, instead of having a big functional spec, why don't we just have little cards that describe a specific step that has to be done, and then we can assign those to people and have a whole process where we're just much faster, and you can work in increments of 2 weeks instead of 3 months, which is kind of the legacy computing world. This is a great one. You ever tried to schedule an appointment with someone and you're emailing back and forth? How's Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Oh, no, I can't do that. How about Monday at 3? Oh, well, that doesn't work for me. And I still end up doing that sometimes. But with this, you can send them a link, and when someone clicks through, you can choose like a 30-minute meeting, and then they pick a time that works for them. And it's synced to your calendar. So if you're using Google Calendar, it won't show them times that aren't available. So if you get in the habit of using Google Calendar, now you've got some leverage there. Not only do you have it all on your phone and available on your computer, you're not going to waste time people trying to schedule times with you that you're just simply not available. Right?
Does that work with Outlook Calendar as well?
Sure. So what happens is they fill out a form, and you can customize the form. So you get their name, phone, email, maybe some questions specific to it. Like, I don't think I have it up here, but, oh yeah, property showing. So in this case, I had a property I was trying to, trying to lease out. So you can say, I'm here to schedule a property showing. So I'd say, here's the address. Please confirm you'll be at this address at this time, and any other information I might request. Do you know when you plan to move? You can add all those questions to it, and then you'll get an email saying this person scheduled a time. You can have it automatically accept, or you can require approval first. So you get the email, and then you decide, no, even though my calendar says I'm free at that time, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to have to change it. Really makes life so much easier, especially if you're someone like me, who I do a lot of phone calls, a lot of scheduling, and it can make a huge difference in freeing up time, not replying back and forth. Sometimes I still get sucked into those, but much less often.
Does it work like, is Doodle a good option as well?
I have not used Doodle seriously. I would imagine it's pretty similar. Another one I've come across is Appointment, which is similar. And this is the one I happen to use. But you can actually do it for teams too. You can have, for a while, Adam and I were both hosting a podcast. So when we were scheduling a podcast interview, we had to look at both of our calendars, not just one of us. And we ended up having Adam just take over the podcast full time. But that was a huge help, a team view where it wouldn't double book or book, something that worked for one of us but not for the other. That was the biggest advantage I saw with Calendly at the time. But that was last year when I set it up. So.
DJ, does that only work with Google Calendar?
Yes, it has. You have to have a Google Calendar. Now you can set up Google to sync to your Outlook, right?
Yeah.
Right. As a matter of fact, that's what I do. I use iCal on my Mac, and most of the time I'm not looking at the actual Google Calendar. I'm looking on my Mac, but it's synced to a Google Calendar. There has to be a Google Calendar. Let's see here. Okay, so a few things on mobile. I want to point out. So one of them, let's just go through these one by one. So the first one is called Full Contact. Full Contact is basically a universal address book that will synchronize all of your contacts across all the systems you have. So I have 3 different Gmail accounts. And I have my phone, obviously, and they all have their own address books. So Full Contact will keep them in sync. So if I add someone in one place, it'll synchronize it across all the other systems and match them together. Furthermore, it'll look up more information. So if it knows your name and email, and here's the link to your LinkedIn profile, I'll pull that in as well. So it builds a richer data set for you to use from. And what's cool is you can take a picture of a business card and it'll just put it in like that. And the way they do that is they actually have people in India who physically inspect the card and type it out and verify it. Now because of that, they only limit you, I think, to 100 per month. That way you can buy more, but the basic package is I think, 100 per month. I'm going to show you some really cool things you can do with that in a little bit. But all by itself, it's very useful to know that if I save someone's address on my phone because it was texted to me, it's going to show up in my Gmail account later on. Zillow, you all know Zillow, of course, but what I like it for is when I was doing fix and flip is to just bookmark it. So there's a property you're interested in, you're driving for dollars, you can star it, and then you'll get automatic email updates on it when things happen to it. And you can go see the ones you bookmarked, and if you want to maybe call some of those people, you can do that on the web based on what you're able to do from a mobile perspective. So CapDeal I've actually changed. I was going to update this. Let's see if my mirroring is working now. Maybe it's not. So up until a couple weeks ago, I could mirror my phone to my computer, and that just stopped working. That's how technology is. It's funny. I've been doing these types of presentations since the 90s. There's always a hassle with connecting to the projector, right? It's always, oh wait, I don't have the right connector, or no, I have to push F7. 20 years that's been around, and it's just always there. It's always a challenge.
DJ, can you talk a little bit louder?
Sure. Okay. So what I was talking about was, what I was going to talk about was CapDeal, but there's another one I prefer today called Noto, N-O-T-O. All it does is, it'd be easier if I could show you, but on your phone it's an app. You configure it to your email address, and all you do is you tap it, and then you can just type notes, and it'll send you an email to yourself. Right. So frequently I'll be out at something like this, and someone will say, hey, you should check out something called Noto, and I'll be like, oh, Noto, yeah, I should check that out. I just type down Noto, hit submit, and it's emailed to me later. It's emailed to me immediately, but I don't have to deal with it till later. So that way, you know that the message is going to show up in your inbox, and you don't have to like open up your mail client, click new message, enter your email address, enter a subject. It just does all that automatically. And it's remarkable how much just reducing that little bit of friction makes it so useful. It's just so much faster. Now I switched to Noto. The one here is CapDeal. I used CapDeal for years. I think they may have stopped making it, but Noto is essentially the same. You can also attach a video or a photo to it. You can take a picture and store that in there. So it's really excellent for just very quickly creating notes on the fly without worrying about the hassle of trying to send yourself an email. Expensify is for tracking expenses. I believe QuickBooks, their mobile version, supports this as well now. So you can just take a picture of a receipt, like from lunch today, and categorize it on the fly, and it'll automatically transcribe it so that you have actionable data that you can then import into your accounting system. Yeah, let me show you this real quick. This is what's cool about full contact is, so this is just some people that are in my list, and what's really cool is you can tag that information too, right? So maybe you meet someone and you want to remember that they're a broker, or that they're a potential investor, or that they only invest in Mississippi or something like that. You can just create a tag for them, type that in, and it'll remember previous tags. And then when you want to go back and retrieve and look at those people, so this is for an event I went to, Ultimate Partnering 9, a couple years ago. So these are all the people that I met at that specific event. And I even have the original picture of their business card. So I take a picture of the business card, I know that they went to Ultimate Partnering 9, and it just makes it a lot easier to organize it. Because the faster you get those things into a system like this, the less guilty you feel about that big stack of business cards you have. Adam still has a box like this big. Because it makes it more actionable. And that's the kind of thing, just every now and then, going through your business cards, taking pictures, some downtime. It's grunt work, but it's way better than typing and entering, right? And so it's a good task to get in the habit of doing just when you have some downtime every now and then. Just scan some business cards, tag them appropriately, and then they're all here. And then you can export these later if you want it.
What did you say I missed today?
This is Full Contact.
Full contact.
Full Contact is the one up here in the upper left corner. They're based in Denver, by the way. Started here. Okay, but these are my two favorite mobile technologies. Does anyone here have AirPods? Do you like them? I love them. I mean, they're fantastic. The sound is really good. It's a really seamless user experience. And everyone worries about them falling out. They don't fall out. I was worried about that too. The big thing is you don't have a cable hanging off of them, right? So I could think of maybe a couple of times maybe it's fallen out. And it's very seamless when you plug it in, when you put them on, it makes this kind of boom sound, so you know you're connected, so you're not there fiddling with your Bluetooth working, all that. It just bang, it works. And if you're listening to music, all you got to do is pull it out and it'll stop the music. So if someone wants to talk to you, it's not, like, oh wait, let me find the pause thing. And if you're in the car a lot, it's fantastic because, so I'll put these in my ears, and then I have this little mount, and I'll just put my phone right up here, and if I'm going somewhere, it'll have my GPS running. And if someone calls me, I've got my earbuds in, I just have to click answer, and it's just so much better than any experience I've ever had when it comes to mobile technology. So, I mean, this will run you $20, $25. AirPods are pricey and obviously only for Apple.
Those don't work with Android?
I believe there's some out now for Android, but Apple doesn't make them. There's a lot of patents involved because it uses pressure sensors to tell whether you put them in your ear or not. So I'm not sure. I've seen some nicer ones now for Android, but I haven't personally tested them. So.
What makes the mount? What makes the mount?
I'm not even sure. I just took this off of Amazon, a picture. There's a bunch of them. There's, dozens of them online. Yes?
How do you charge the
Oh, okay. So I didn't know this for a long time. So this little carrying case, right? You plug this into a regular, like an Apple thing, right? And this case itself is a battery. So, and it has enough for 24 hours. So I can use this for all day. Realistically, if you're on the phone a lot, you're gonna run down into the juice in about 3 hours. But you can do them one at a time, so you can just have one in and use that. Or you can put them both back in, and this thing will recharge it for you within, very quickly. Oh yeah. I mean, everyone's Everyone says it sounds completely normal. I don't notice a difference at all. Yeah, and the sound is terrific. So if you like listening to music, it's really, really good. So I can't recommend those enough. Let's pop over to. So this one's a little more advanced, but it's incredibly powerful. So Zapier, Z-A-P-I-E-R. It might be Zapier, but I've always just pronounced it Zapier because to me it's like rapier. But Zapier, I meant the thing. So what it allows you to do is it takes all these apps you use and connect them together, right? So let's say you have a webinar. I didn't really feature them here, but we use Zoom a lot. You've probably heard of them. They do a lot of advertising. Zoom.us for a webinar. We'll send someone a link to register for the webinar. Well, all that does is puts that data in the Zoom webinar system. It doesn't put it into our email system, right? And in the past, what you'd have to do is to export that CSV, go over to your email system, upload what you downloaded, and it's a pain in the butt. And this is a problem that's true of all modern web applications. Very few of them have integrations between systems. So Zapier allows you to connect these systems together. So here's one that we were using. We've actually stopped using this, but it's still a very useful thing that you can do. Is I can set it up so that when let's say I'm using full contact for scanning business cards, I can set it up so that when I scan that card, it'll automatically add them to a MailChimp list, right? So I don't have to go home and say, now let me get this guy into MailChimp, or let me export my full contact and put it into MailChimp. It happens instantly. And if you get creative, you can have it automatically send them an email, hey, it was nice meeting you last night, or nice meeting you today. And it'll just, what I typically do is I send out an email that's just got my contact info, here's my LinkedIn, here's my phone number, just so you have my contact info. And now they're in MailChimp. We don't use MailChimp for most of our marketing anymore, but if we did, we would certainly still be doing that. So Zapier connects literally over 1,000 applications. And that's one of my first questions when I'm looking at a product that we might want to use. My first question is, do you have a connector for Zapier? Because if you don't, then you're not up to speed. You don't have a handle on your data operations. Let's see what I've got as an example here. This is an advanced technique as well. So this has been around for quite a long time. Something called Amazon Mechanical Turk. Has anyone ever heard of that? So Amazon Mechanical Turk has been around since at least 2007. Mechanical Turk. Turk like Turkish. So where they took that name is back in the 19th century, there was this Turkish man who would take it wasn't, I think it was a white guy, but he had this chess playing machine that could beat anyone. And it was this big box, and he claimed it was a computer. And he would challenge anyone to a chess game. They'd sit down, and the pieces would move like magnetically or something, and it would win. He said, I invented the world's first computer, before they even used the word computer. Well, it turned out there was just a small Turkish man underneath in the box who would play. He was just very good at chess. And so the idea is they created this thing that looked like a computer, but in fact it was a human. And Amazon Mechanical Turk was debuted to do that same thing. So if you have small tasks where it's time intensive, but it's not, you don't have to be that smart to do it. You don't have to have an advanced degree or anything like that. You can do things that were not possible before. So let's see if I've got an example. So here's what I did. I did an experiment. It didn't quite work out, and I'll explain why. So I wanted to get a list of recent evictions from the city of Denver. And they were kind of like, what do you want that for? I'm like, because that's gold, that's why. Well, it turns out the way the city does it, you have to, they won't give you a disc or anything. All it has is the case number. It doesn't have any names or addresses or anything like that. And they give it to you on paper. So I think I did this in 2017. So it was 2016's data. I took, there was like 8,000 evictions in that year. And I took like the last 400 or something like that just to do this as a test. Went to UPS, but if you have a scanner, you can do this yourself. Had them scanned in and converted to a spreadsheet. And with the way the city works is if I want to know any more details about that eviction, I have to enter the case number. So you go to this website, little form, you have to enter the case number, it's got the little CAPTCHA thing, you know, and hit submit. So there's no way for me to automatically just submit them all at once. It had to be done one by one. But the actual task of submitting that is 5 seconds. You know? So I created a mechanical Turk task where I could have people just one at a time. I pay them 5 cents a piece. You go in and enter this data, and I'll give you 5 cents. And within about 30 minutes, I had all those records converted, and I had all the data behind the wall. Unfortunately, that data wasn't so good either, because it didn't have the mailing address. It just had the defendant's name, the plaintiff's name, and I think that was it. Yeah.
Curious, just for the list, was that the list info's fault, or just the person who was entering?
It's because Denver and I think the entire state of Colorado is hyper protective of privacy.
Even when you look it up, there's not much.
Yeah, you know, they want you to have to work extra hard with that. And you know, when I was asking for this, they were kind of suspicious of me. They're like, "What do you want this for?" And I said, "It's just a research project. I'm just trying to understand evictions." And there is a law that you can't use open data for private property, you know, private market gain or something like that. So technically, if I follow through, I would have been breaking the law. But think in terms of lists that you can get that maybe just aren't completely correct. But if you have one person who can go into a website and enter them one by one, that would be something Mechanical Turk would be great for. So a friend of mine, he did it for tax liens. What he would do is upload addresses, and they'd have someone go on Google Maps and take a screenshot of the street view of that address. And you could do that for hundreds of properties all at once, rather than having to himself type that in and look at it. Right? So there's some really interesting things you can do when you sort of think about, well, what if I could pay someone to do this, but just pay them 5, 10 cents, or even $1 if it's very high value data. That's the kind of thing that Mechanical Turk allows. It's a really powerful tool.
So DJ, it's interesting you use that example. Just this morning, we hired some guy out of the Philippines or something through Upwork to do that same thing, take street views and put it into our CRM under every property so we could get a quick feel. Just put this into cement for me versus something like Upwork. Do you think this is a lot cheaper?
This is definitely cheaper, but it's more of a one. You're never going to know the name of the person who does this. They're totally anonymous.
Yeah.
And it's going to be cheaper, but if you're trying to teach them your system and want them doing other things, then Upwork is a better option. This is for hyper-targeted, very specific online types of tasks. Okay. We used to use it when I was at Survey Gizmo to create data sets, because when we were showing off our product to people, we would want demos of surveys and reports about those surveys, which means we had to have data in the system. So we would just post on Mechanical Turk, please go fill out this survey, we'll pay you 20 cents. And pretty quickly we'd have 100, 200 responses, then we could use that to generate reports to show people. So that's how I was first introduced to it. So, let's talk a little bit about security. I sort of touched on security early on. So I mentioned I have a bunch of different Google accounts. This is Dashlane. They have a tool that's a subscription service that runs on all of your devices, on your PC, on your phone, laptop, whatever, or pad, or whatever you call it. And it'll keep all your passwords. It'll also generate new passwords for secure passwords that aren't just like password, that have numbers and @ symbols and whatever in them. And in some cases, it can actually go through and change your password. So let's say there's a security breach that's publicized, they'll notify you. This happened with me a while back. I think Facebook had a security breach, and it'll just go through. And not all sites will allow this, but most of them, they can just go through and automatically go through and change your password on that site. So you have to yes, sir.
I'm always going to worry about using those things. If someone hacks it and now they got access to all your passwords. Are you ever worried about that?
Yes, on some level, but the way they work is you have a master password that's stored locally, and when you use it on your phone, it uses your thumbprint. So they don't actually keep the password stored in their system. They keep what's called a hash of the password. They have to get physical access to your device to actually do it. So yeah, there's a risk, obviously. And you can access the system every time I start up my computer. It asks for my master password, which is a hard to remember phrase, and it'll pop. It's not perfect, but typically when I'm signing into a website, it'll pop up, and you do a choice of who do you want to log in as, and you can select.
It's handy.
Yeah, it's really good. And there's a bunch of them. There's one password's been around longer than Dashlane. That's a really popular one. But it's just, you absolutely have to do this. You have to do this. This is a problem that is never going to go away. Here's the thing, too, about security breaches. Companies aren't in the habit of disclosing when they have a security breach. They don't do it unless someone catches them, right? So the big example a couple years ago was Experian, 75 million. They didn't just volunteer that information. They volunteered it because an investigative reporter, was calling them and telling them. So for every one of those you hear about, there's 10 more. They just kind of, shh, don't tell anybody, right? That's not going to change. It's just. Did you have a question? Yes. This one's called Dashlane, DASH.
And what is that? What are the dues for that?
I'm sorry.
What are the dues?
I think it's $29 a year, something like that. Yeah, and there's enterprise versions too if you want to get your whole company one. There's another one called Log Me In that does something similar. But these companies do not disclose it unless they're nailed dead to rights. And they will do, they're going to lawyer up when they do, right? So what did Experian do? They launched a new service. They're giving you for free. Yeah. Right? But check your credit card statement in 2 years, they're going to start billing you for it. It's just the nature of the game. Security is a never-ending problem. It's an infinite hole. I wish I knew more about security because there's so much money to be made. Just when you think about how many companies are vulnerable, how poor most people's password practices are, it's an infinite opportunity. So unfortunately, this is going away. They've incorporated some of this, but this is Google Inbox, which was kind of their exploratory new version of Gmail. And they've incorporated some of this into the most recent version of Gmail, but it's still not as great as I would like it. But a couple things that they both do is you can snooze a message. Right? So sometimes you get a message and you're like, I just don't have time to deal with this. I'll deal with this next week. Let me snooze it. So it goes away, it comes back next week. Or you could do the opposite, or you can send it and snooze that. So let's say I have a property manager who drives me batty. I have to ask her 3 times. What it does is it keeps a running list of your last 30 copies and pastes. Right? So, interesting. Let's see if I can use it here. Yeah, okay. So there's a command key that pops up, and this shows the last things I've copied, the most recent things I've copied and pasted, right? So I might have copied an email, text, or a URL, or the name of something, and I can say, oh, I already copied that sometime in the last 5 minutes. I probably still have it in my history here, so I can just go back and find it. That way I don't have to go back to the original source, copy it yet again, paste it yet again. It's one of those things that once you start using it, you just start amazed at how much faster you are with things. I don't know of the exact equivalent in the PC, but I'm sure something like that must exist. Another one is Text Expander. Let me show you an example of that in action. I'll just use. So Text Expander, you can put shortcut snippets that you use a lot, right? So I use. Oops. I think I might have turned it off. That's a good shortcut too for the Mac is Command Spacebar and start typing the name of the app you want to use. That opens up. So instead of having to look through applications, it'll just find them for you. So if I just type this in, it automatically replaces it with my phone number, right? And so if you have a phrase that you use a lot in your email that you want to copy and paste, you can just create a shortcut for that. Like for our mailing address, I always forget it, so I have a shortcut. It's just semicolon BAD, business address, and it replaces it with the actual business address. This is really useful too if you find yourself typing the same thing over and over. It's called Text Expander. Text Expander, and that's a Mac app as well. So let's get back into presentation mode. Oh, and then there's an app I haven't been using it as much, but it's called Sheet. And what it does is for any app you're using, again, this is on a Mac, if you hold down the command bar, it's kind of like that Google example. It'll show you all the shortcuts for whatever application you're using. So if there's an application that you find yourself using a lot, you want to get better at shortcuts, you can do that and just see the shortcuts that are available to you. It's especially good if you're getting, if you picked up a new application and you start using a new video editor or a new sound editor, and you want to learn the shortcuts, you can use that as a quick way to remind you of what they are. So let's talk about weapons of mass distraction. Anyone here ever get distracted by your phone? Yeah. I fear for kids growing up in this environment. I don't know how their brains are going to function. So the tech industry is finally starting to realize that maybe it's not a good thing that we're all just doing this all day. And they're only just starting to realize it. I mean, this has been coming, there's been criticism of this for the last 5 years. There's a website called Time Well Spent. It's a guy who used to work at Facebook, and he just got fed up with it. He's like, I spend all my time trying to get people addicted to their phone, and that doesn't feel right. And so he quit and started this company. Now he lobbies companies to kind of come up with some new tools for it. So I'm going to show you a couple that I've used. So one is called Flipped, and their target is students. Just if you go look at their website, it's all about students who have to stay focused on their work. But certainly, it's useful for me as well. So what it does is it basically, once you turn it on, you can set a certain amount of time, like 2 hours or 12 hours, doesn't matter how much time. And it deletes all the apps on your phone. You can't access them. You can't download a new app. They're just gone. And then after the time has passed, it puts them back, right? So if you find yourself, like I would sometimes do, I'd be at home at night, there'd be things I should be doing, but instead, I remember one night I looked at the bookshelf, I was looking at something stupid on my phone, and I had a bookshelf with a bunch of books that I haven't read yet. I'm like, why don't I read those books that someone actually sat down and spent countless hours writing, as opposed to some goofy meme that someone created, for 15 seconds of fame on Instagram, and so it deletes the app, and I do it pretty much every night when I get home around 7 or 8. I'll go into flipped mode. But I'll do it during the day sometimes as well. It does still give you the phone and texting, because maybe in an emergency you need to contact someone, and a handful of Google navigation, or not even Google, but just the basic navigation app, so whatever your phone is. And it's a cold turkey approach.
What about email?
It does give you access to email. Yeah. Now, Apple has also started incorporating some of these technologies into their apps. I have not really had a chance to play with it, but they have. It might even be called Time Well Spent. It's a new setting that just rolled out with the latest release of iOS that allows you to limit your access to certain apps too. I think it's pretty milquetoast though. I think all it does is turns off notifications. I think you can still access and use the apps.
I find airplane mode works really well.
Yeah, airplane mode. Yeah, that's a good strategy as well.
That's a good idea.
So that one's for the phone, and then Focus is what I use on the desktop computer, and it works the same way. You can have schedules of between 8 a.m. and noon. I can't look at any of these websites, and then maybe I'll turn it off for lunch, and then from 12 to 5 blocks again. One of the smartest things I started doing was I stopped taking my computer home from work. Lately that's changed a little bit, but for the longest time, I would take my computer home as if I'm going to work, but I'd never just get distracted because I think, oh, it's evening time, I can go on Facebook or whatever. And it's just a time suck, There's another one, I stopped using this, but it did make a difference. It's called Moments, or it's called Moment. And what it does is tracks your usage of the phone, and it'll have a reminder that goes off when, like you say, I don't use my phone more than 2 hours a day. You set that up, and once you get close to 2 hours, it'll start ringing, saying, hey, you're getting close to that 2 hours. And then after 2 hours, I think the default is every 10 minutes, it buzzes if you're using the phone. It says, hey, you're distracted, get back to what you were doing. That can be annoying, but that's the purpose, right? Is to intentionally remind you, hey, you made this commitment to yourself, and now you're not upholding it.
So is this
screen time too?
Screen time, yeah. I haven't had a chance to look at screen times closely, because that just came out, but it's a similar kind of concept.
Is it the type of concept where you can say to your children, if you can check every day to see how much time they've spent on their phone and then reward them or teach them or
check out MM Guardian for your children.
What's that?
Check out MM Guardian for your children.
MM Guardian?
Yeah. You can do all sorts of fun things.
What's it called again?
MM Guardian.
Okay.
You get it for free for 30 days and you pay like $8, but you can shut off certain things at certain times.
Cool.
I think it's going to have to be mandatory. I mean, like a law. Like kids cannot use the phone for more than.
You missed your chores. You're cut off.
You
You
can
can
have
remotely
it
shut off their phone.
You can have it where they just call you. They can only call you, and it can even send out a text to their friend. They text it with whatever you want it to say.
So are there any men in here over 40? Do you remember what it was like when you had to call a girl and her dad would answer the phone?
Yes.
These kids today just text directly,
Do you know an app that's good to record, like, sometimes there's a webinar and I can't make it and I want to record it, so if you can help that.
I mean, Zoom records their webinars, but it's up to the presenter to make it available.
Right. Some do, some don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably an app that will record your phone screen, but you would have to have the screen open.
No, but I turn it on my computer and I record the presentation.
Oh, I don't know, Chad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, screencast, or if you have Zoom as well, it's recorded.
Oh, you can record something else that's going?
It's someone else's webinar, but I sit in on it, but I can make it. So I'm going to sign up for it.
I would try that with Zoom first, see if you can just record it on the webinar. If not, then look at something like Screencast or ScreenFlow, is it?
Yeah, there's a couple.
I've got one I'm using, but it's not very good.
Yeah, it's tricky because it's taking digitized content and converting it to analog and converting it back to digital. It's not ideal. One thing though that's similar that I use a lot, and I used in this presentation, was Skitch, which is now owned by Evernote. Skitch allows you to very quickly take a screenshot of something. And this is incredibly useful. I mean, I use it a lot for presentations. If I want to take a screen capture of a logo or something, I can do that. And you can edit it, you can mark it up. So I'll put this little arrow here, I added some text. You can blur out some things if you want to protect someone's privacy. And you can share it easily. So there's an upload button, it'll upload to a website, gives you a link. This is really helpful for tech support, honestly. If you're trying to do something and it's not working, it's giving you a weird error, take a screenshot of that, copy that link, and send it to the support forum. They'll thank you so much, because when people describe what's going on, they have a hard time describing it. So an image is truly worth 1,000 words. They also will do like a time screen cap, so you can set it to wait 5 seconds and then it takes a screen capture. Maybe you put the mouse over something and click a button. Things like that. It's really slick. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin and the blockchain. Anyone here own any cryptocurrencies? It's been a tough year, huh? So it's actually really apropos. I believe it was yesterday was the 10th anniversary of Bitcoin. Right? The Bitcoin white paper is what it's called. And it's a pretty, I mean, I don't quite understand it. It's cryptographic speak. but it's a pretty simple white paper. It's less than 10 pages that explains the whole concept of Bitcoin. And here it is 10 years later, still going. You know, it's worth, I don't know, certainly in the hundreds of billions, I think, still, if you capitalize all of the owners. It's got a lot of, you know, alternate, there's hype cycles around it, and, you know, we're in a bear market right now. A lot of people have been getting killed buying Bitcoin and other related cryptocurrencies. But conceptually, I think it's here to stay. And so I think it's important we at least address it for a second. So there's a great writer. He's a writer, but he's one of these borderline scam artists. His name is James Altucher, who he's a brilliant writer, but he also tends to oversell things a little bit. But I think he's right about this. Is he thinks that when you look at the history of humanity, it's basically a move from theism to humanism to dataism. So theism is basically beliefs in God. So if you rewind the clock and we go back 5,000, 10,000 years, you know, can you imagine what it would have been like to live here and not be able to know about hurricanes coming? You know, 3 days ahead of time. Thanks to technology, we know that. It would just be like you're just tilling your field like you always do, and all of a sudden this gigantic catastrophe comes. It just wipes out everything, and you're drowning in floods for weeks on end. And so naturally people said, well, we must have angered somebody. The gods are angry with us, right? That was how we explained the world, right? Over time, we started learning more about scientists, and we realized, oh no, we as humans can do things to control the environment to a certain degree. We can at least predict when hurricanes are going to hit us, or you know, we can anticipate certain types of outcomes, you know, likely outcomes of events. And so that happened also with medicine, right? So it used to be you pretty much just prayed and hoped that this cut you had got better. Then we looked to the local shamanic leader who maybe had some medicine they could give you, maybe not. But then we started using data to understand the genome. You know, understand, well, this is the building blocks of life. Here's why certain people get certain types of diseases. Here's why others don't. And you can use data to use it to build a new type of medicine. It was just impossible without data. I think that's kind of the same with money. So money used to be something that was decreed by the gods. It says, in God we trust, our currencies, right? Or at least by the divine ruler, right? So Caesar used to have his picture stamped on the coins. And then humans got involved and found some really interesting ways to create things like leverage, you know, loaning, and you know, the joint stock corporation, and developed all these new techniques. But of course, that led to a lot of booms and busts and outright scams. And this new type of cryptocurrency is a data version of money. So it allows you to prove, if I give someone some money, it proves that yes, I actually did give them real money. I didn't go make a photocopy of it, or in other words, forge the money. And I can prove that you have it, and I can prove it happened on this date and at this time, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We don't need a bank to validate it, to say, yes, DJ did give that money to John. There's no middleman. It's all direct, but it's all stored in computers. And that is a very powerful concept. Now, it's led to a lot of scams and a lot of confusion. There's been a ton of basically pyramid schemes that come out of this. But I think it will be really useful for the concept of using what they call immutable data. So it's data that cannot be changed. The way the blockchain works is a consensus. There's literally millions of computers that all agree. They don't know each other. They don't have to have a legally sanctioned relationship. They just all agree that the math works out and this person owns the money they say they do. And you can use that for things like land titles, deeds, things like that. It doesn't have to be money. There's all kinds of types of assets that it would be useful to use the blockchain for. And there's some companies working on that. So I mentioned a couple, and I have no idea if these companies are going to be any good. LA Token and Realisto, there's another called Profi. These are just companies I found that are doing this. I don't know if they're ready for prime time. I mean, what I do know, I mentioned earlier the internet started in 1972. And by 1980, it was really common among computer scientists and researchers to have access to it, right? But the commercial internet, what we think of, as the modern web, didn't really start until about 1994. So it was 22 years before it really started to catch on. And I don't think it'll take 22 years, but it's going to take, at least another 5 to 10 before crypto really takes off. Because it's right now it's really kludgy and hard to use. And we see people they're trying to take an old world mentality and apply it to a new world. And it's a new world that we don't quite understand yet. So imagine it's 1987. Well, I remember talking to my dad, trying to explain to him how email worked. He just could not fathom that it didn't cost you 10 cents a minute to send an email. It just made no sense because it was a different paradigm. The old telephone network is what's called, what do they call it? It's not packet switched, but line switched, which means that for me to call you, we have two lines, physical lines that get tied up, right? And so even if I'm not saying anything to you, and you're not saying anything to me, that line is tied up. With the internet, you have what's called packet switch, which means if I'm not saying anything to you, nothing gets broadcast, nothing is tied up. It breaks into little packets, and it routes those packets through many different lines. There's no single line to work with. So, so if you're trying to explain the internet to someone in 1987, it just makes no sense. The closest you might have gotten is, well, it's kind of like postcards, but it's really fast. But they still wouldn't get that you don't have to pay postage on it, right? It just makes no sense. And people, even the most cutting edge people back then, still thought email was just a toy. Like I said, I used to go to present to investors. You're like, email, it's a toy. They never thought that, well, gee, I wonder if, a brokerage company might want to use email to communicate with their customers instead of mailing out these big statements. Right? Just some really fundamental, basic stuff that we all take for granted now. No one was thinking of in 1994. So I feel like that's what's true right now with most of the blockchain stuff I see, is they're trying to say, let's take this thing we do now, but put it on the blockchain. And some of those may take off. I mean, property in particular is focused on land titles. They still have to get all these municipalities to agree to do it. And when it comes to technology, here's the way it works with technology. You have the early adopters, the geeks, the very early adopters. And then you kind of have people like me who sort of come in maybe a couple years later and start using it. Then you get mainstream uptake. Then you get ubiquity. Pretty much everyone uses it. Then the banks. Then the government. Right? I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, banks are always the slowest, partly because we want banks to be slow. When they move fast, that's when 2007, 2008 happens, right? They don't really understand the full ramifications of what they're getting into. We want them to be really slow when it comes to changing. And government is just always starved. They never have enough resources or the talent or the ambition or whatever it is. So anything that involves banks and government, it's going to take a long time. And so with this technology, there's going to be a Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency trillionaire. I mean, I think probably in my lifetime there's going to be someone who's a trillionaire from this technology, and it's going to be by doing something that creates something we never even realized we needed, like Uber. No one thought we needed Uber, right? Except for a couple of really smart guys. That's just impossible to imagine in the current paradigm. So it's worth keeping an eye on. It's going to take a few more years to play out, but this is a great quote from Bill Gates. We always overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years and underestimate the next 10. So, even 10 years ago, the iPhone had just come out, right? 2007, I think it came out. And back, no one imagined that we would use it the way we do. But now it's just everywhere, right? So back then they probably thought, yeah, we think someday, the original IBM computer, when they came out with the PC, my sister worked at IBM during this time. It was the first PC, which was about 5 years after. So the first PC was like 1975, which was the Altair, which didn't have a monitor, it just had these switches, And then the Apple came out, I want to say around 1978. And then the Apple II came out in 80, I think, 79 or 80. And that was the first mass-produced PC that really caught on. TRS-80 came out from Radio Shack and all that. Then IBM announced their IBM PC in 1981. And their projection was that it would be a $100 million market one day. They thought that was compared to their $1 billion mainframe market. right? Well, now it's tens of billions of dollars market that are spent on PCs, and trillions when you start looking into other technologies that support and supply PCs. So even the most ambitious, biggest companies out there have no idea what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. I mean, Bitcoin's been around for 10 years, and there's no reason to think it won't be around for another 10 years. And if it's not, it will be because something better, even better than Bitcoin came along. So something to keep in mind.
Do you think, blockchain technology is going to be relevant in a lot of ways. Do you think it's going to, and I also follow James, if you lost me, a cheesy sales pitch, but he's a good writer.
Yeah, he's a good writer.
For the public to really realize the blockchain technology, is that what it's going to take to validate Bitcoin? To become more of part of it, because you're going to hold your license.
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be something that comes out that doesn't have the word blockchain in it, or
right.
Bitcoin. It's just going to be this new thing. It'd be cool, and we don't talk about cryptocurrency. We don't talk about blockchain, except maybe in some weird obtuse way that like Google. The word Google has been around since before Google, but no one ever used that word. Right. And so we'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool. They're using this new word. That's weird. Oh, what's Google mean? Well, it turns out Google does have a meaning, and it's a big meaning. It's it's the largest. It's the what is it? 1 plus 100 zeros after it. Right. There's more. Conceptually, there's more. If you count to that number, that's more than all the atoms in space. There's only like 10 to the 8. So it'll be something like that, and it'll be something. It probably will happen outside the U.S. first. Because it's like mobile phones. Like phone services in developing countries were non-existent, forever. And then they said, well, we don't have to do the old, what they call a POTS, plain old telephone service. Well, we don't have to build that big infrastructure anymore, big ditches. We can just put up cell towers. That's an order of magnitude cheaper than doing that. And so cell service took off in other countries, and the mobile internet took off in those other countries faster than it did here. So I suspect blockchain will be the kind of thing where it allows people to transact on very small scales, a dime at a time. For us, we don't even really care about a dime. But if you live in a developing country, that's real money. And there'll be ecosystems that build around that.
There was a real estate transaction.
Right, yeah. And there's people who've used Bitcoin to buy real estate, but that to me is no more meaningful than saying I bought some real estate with euros. Right. It's just a cryptocurrency. Ultimately, that turns into dollars somewhere, right? You're not just going to accept it, or maybe you will, even if you're stupid. But it wasn't fundamental to the transaction. What I do think will happen, and this is what Ethereum I think brings. I didn't really talk about smart contracts, but the smart contracts are basically automated systems that use the Ethereum blockchain. An example would be renting a car. DocuSign has done some examples of this, where I don't have to go fill out a bunch of forms, give them my credit card. I just sign it with my phone, and then the smart contract tells the car, okay, DJ has access to this car for the next 48 hours. Recognize his phone as the key to the car, unlocks it. I have full control of it, and then within the car I can upgrade. I can say, you know what, I need extra services that you might be able to supply, and then when the contract's done, it gets closed out on the Ethereum blockchain. It's all transparent. Anyone can see that transaction. I mean, it's anonymized, but you can see that yes, this vehicle was used by this person or a person during this time frame, and that's probably the closest we'll get to any kind of day-to-day transaction that some of us could recognize. And yeah, that does save me time. That does save me money. There's a lot of other stuff that's kind of more behind the scenes that we won't even really know about. The most interesting application I've heard of is self-driving cars. In a world where we're like 80% self-driving cars. You could imagine, like, if you're really in a hurry, your car will pay the other cars to get out of the way. Right? And it'll just speed up, and they all get credited. They make a little bit of money, covers whatever, 20 cents worth of electricity, or whatever it is. So I think we'll someday get to that kind of world where we're using these technologies to just go on automatically under the covers. We're never even aware of them working. That's the most exotic one I can think of. But You know, I mentioned, I'll just say, like, Proppy has made pretty good progress in getting some municipalities to adopt it for title transfer. I think that's a great application of it, but it's like I said, government is always the last. And as long as the government's involved, there's going to have to be some just tremendously compelling benefit for the governments to want to get in early on this.
Not to save money.
Yeah, but it's got to be like,
Keep control.
yeah, I mean, the money, they want to maintain control of it, right? Typically, something has to be 10x better for it to get traction, just with consumers, right? So, like, I remember Yahoo before Google, Yahoo and Alta Vista, and there's one called Starting Point, there was Ink2Me, all these search engines. And then I used Google and was like, oh my God, this is 10 times better. It's not like a little better, it's 10 times better than what came before. And so I switched immediately. I started using Google for everything after that. And that's what most people did. So for this kind of thing to take hold at an enterprise level, it's got to be like that. It's got to be not just, you know, our projections show that we'll have a return on investment of 45% in year one and 60% in year two. It's got to be, you're so stupid not to be using this. It's got to be so obvious that you're going to be able to lay off a bunch of people or give everyone raises or something before it gets adopted. Because that's just the nature of the way technology works. And I fully expect there will be a tipping point where a lot of real estate people want to use blockchain, but governments won't, and so they're always complaining about how slow the government is to implement that. I don't know exactly when that will happen. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate the chance.